All right. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the show. How exciting. It's been a week. Things we're not going to mention on the show today. Number one, anything to do with the election. And number two, anything to do with TikTok, because we just can't be bothered with that. We have too many things to talk about with regards to Ecamm Live. And in the spirit of Ecamm, they've decided to give us a brand new beta to the beta that we just had, which was released about 30 minutes ago. So at the time of you watching this, either live or on the replay, we are literally 5 minutes in to have downloaded the latest version of the beta. And why not? Let's just go live with it, because what could possibly go wrong on a live show with beta software that we're running that we've just installed 5 minutes ago? And when I say we, of course, Mr. McKenna is here as ever. Hello, Martin. Welcome to the show. Living on the edge, aren't we today? Living on the edge.
We're living on the edge. We have a tech check just before we go live on the show, and during the tech check I suddenly noticed, oh, there's a new version of the beta that came out 35 minutes ago. We better go and download it. So yeah, for anyone watching out there, we are living on the edge today because the beta that we're currently using is 30 minutes old. We've only had it for 5 minutes. So yeah, we will see what happens.
Yes, indeed. We're going to find out whether this thing is going to be working or not. I'm sure it is. No problem at all. We have Val in the house, so let's just say hello to Valerie. We're just going to be making sure that these comments come up. There they are. Hello, Valerie. We're using native Ecamm everything today. We've not got any plugins or any third-party stuff going on. So let's see. And we've got Moo Ant here. Way to go. Yes, we're doing it live. So for those of you who don't, who haven't been here before, Martin and I present a weekly, soon to be twice weekly, live show all about tech, video production, design, anything to do with leveling up your video, audio, live streams, content creation, whatever it might be. And we don't just talk about the features and things, we actually show you some real world applications and how this software and stuff can make you better as content creators and level up your Zoom, Teams, whatever meetings that you do. But today we're going to be talking about our software that we use every day pretty much, which is Ecamm Live, and Ecamm has just released beta 2 of 4.4, which is the latest. And as you can see, they've made a few changes. We'll be walking through not every change because there's that many. We only have just over an hour on the show. So we're going to be talking about a couple of the key features. One of them that we're showing right now as we keep switching between scenes is Live Motion. It did change name, so we keep getting it wrong, so forgive us. It's called Live Motion, and that's where we're going to be transitioning some scenes that Martin's going to be showing you some of the workflows and how to do that. So I will, first of all, take us through one of the latest updates, which is the pan, tilt, zoom control for your OBSBot, Insta360 Link. I'm just reading the list. NDI cameras, anything that supports pan, tilt, zoom. The guys at Ecamm have decided to try to integrate that into the software, which means you can actually control your camera now using a handy-dandy new controller. So I'm just going to move a few things out of the way so you'll be able to see. And Martin's going to disappear for a second because I'm going to go into live demo mode. So in fact, I can keep you on screen actually and go in live demo mode. No, I can't. I can't do that. That would just be awful. Right, I'm just going to go into host. Oh, my live demo mode's gone a bit wonky there. Hang on. Oh, live demo mode is on the wrong screen now. That's a weird one. Let me just go back. What is happening? Live demo mode. There we go. You can be side by side. There you go. You're in live demo mode with me now.
Yeah,
that was a bit
can be in live.
odd.
I'm in live demo mode.
So what we have is pan, tilt, zoom control for our OBSBot cameras. Both Martin and I love the OBSBot range. We've got quite a few cameras between us now. I don't know, have we got like 4 or 5 of these cameras between us? I'm not sure. There's quite a lot. Oh, speaking of one, there is Martin's OBSBot camera. And another one. They're everywhere. Right.
They're everywhere.
I'm going to switch over to my OBSBot camera here. So Martin will disappear for a second. So I'm going to switch over to the tiny 4K, which is just above me. And typically, to control this camera, the pan, the tilt, the zoom, and the presets and stuff, you either have to use the OBSBot software, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with the OBSBot software. Or you can pre-program these things in to your Stream Deck. But what they have in Ecamm is a way now to control these via a handy controller. The way to get to it is if it doesn't pop up automatically when you plug in your OBSBot camera, then you can simply go to the camera switcher, which is here. Let me just make this a little bit bigger. And if you go to all sources, these are all the cameras that are connected. As you can see, there's a few cameras knocking around here. We've got the tail air down at the bottom, which is actually connected via wireless, NDI in this particular case. And then the other camera that I'm trying to find is the Tiny 2. And I can't see it. Where is the Tiny 2 camera? There it is. My eyes, too small. Let me just zoom that in a second. There you go. So the Tiny 2 camera is here. And you'll see, if I just put on my little cursor, you'll see down here at the bottom there is a little control. And it's a four-way control here on the actual camera switcher itself. And if I click on that, and just get rid of camera switcher, you can now see that we've got this control for the camera. So if I start to just click this joystick, you can see the camera is actually starting to move, which is super cool. So this gives you all the control of your pan tilt zoom camera within Ecamm. And the good thing is that it doesn't really matter how many cameras you've got. If I go back to the camera switcher and pull up the one for the OBSBot tail air and close it down, now I've got two. So you can have as many of these controls as you have cameras. You might need a bit more space for them, but I'll just close that one down for a second. The good thing about it is it also allows you to store the presets. So I've got different presets here listed on my OBSBot camera, but you can actually set and save them within Ecamm itself. So if I move this around here, for example, I'll just leave it there, and I'll go to preset 1 and say save. That preset now is saved to preset 1, and I'll just move this one over here a little bit further. Look at that lovely plant. It's not real. If I go to preset 2 and save that one, now I can just recall them. So if I go back to preset 1 and hit recall, boom, it just switches straight to those presets. So again, not having to use the OBSBot software or the Stream Deck for this, I can control it directly from within Ecamm. The pan tilt speed is all to do with how quickly this joystick controls your camera. Whoa, I'm going to recall that back. As you can see, not very good with the mouse. So I keep this down to around 0. It gives me a little bit more control, a little bit more finesse. And there is an AI tracking option that they've added as well. So AI tracking, if your camera supports that, not all of the PTZ cameras do, then I'm just going to switch that to normal. And now it's enabled the AI tracking directly in Ecamm for the camera. I'm not sure if that was there actually in this other previous version, but this is the latest version of the beta. So they've probably added some things that we don't even know about yet because we're just playing with it. The other good thing is that the preset controls are actually now available when you add the camera as a camera source. And my memory is escaping me how to do this. I think it's actually via the camera switcher. So if I go to the camera switcher, do we have the option there? No, it's actually when I add a camera. Let me just add a new camera to here. You know, I've completely forgotten how to do that. Do you remember how to do that, Martin? I'll bring you back in a second. You add a preset to the camera.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when you go to add a new camera, if you then scroll up to the Tiny 2 Lite, for instance, or the Tiny 2,
okay,
it will give you a drop down of preset 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it's when you go to add a new camera in the AB camera switcher.
Ah, so it's all to do with the camera switcher. It's not as part of the overlay. That's what I was getting wrong. Okay, so let me do that real quick. So let's just go to the camera switcher. Thank you for that. See, that's what Martin does. Keeps me honest. So go to the AB. Let's add a new camera source. Let's add the OBSBot. Where is it? In fact, it's already here, I think. That's why. Did you say all sources or AB? Oh, it's in here. Yeah,
AB.
I'll do it. Yeah. So let's do this one. Let's do the tail air. And there it is. So as Martin said, let's go back to a camera placeholder. I'm picking camera J. And I'm picking the tail air, and as you can see, all the presets are listed here 1 through 10. So whatever presets you've got configured in your tail air, in this particular case, you can set them. And what that means is that for every sort of camera placeholder, you can technically have a different position of your camera on a per placeholder basis, right? So let's say camera 1 is here with one particular preset, and then you add preset 2 for another scene, another camera, it'll just sort of whip pan between the two. So a great way of doing that, and that's fully compatible, I think, with many cameras. Go ahead, Martin.
And does that include zoom as well? So obviously the word zoom gets confusing because there's lots of interpretations of the word zoom, but I mean zoom for the camera.
Yeah.
So could you have preset 1 where you are at the moment, preset 2 that actually includes the camera zoomed in a bit on you, and then preset 3 it's zoomed back out or zoomed
I think
to
so.
a different location?
Let's just
I don't
try
know
it,
the
shall we?
answer to that.
Let's try it. Let's do it live. Why not? So let's just add this camera just real quick. So this is the Tiny. Let's get it centered. And what I'll do is I'll go back to my camera switcher, and is the Tiny here? Yeah, Obsbot Tiny 2. So this is preset 1. And what I'll do for preset 1 is I'll just leave it like that. Make sure that's saved. And then what we'll do is we'll zoom in. Ooh, no, extreme close-up. Sorry about that, everybody. And then let's say that's preset 2. Okay, so camera J will be set to preset 1. And as we spoke about before, the real-time preview is a little bit odd in here, but let's do camera J. So that's preset 1. And then if I go to a new scene, let's just duplicate that real quick. And then I will change this to camera I. Tiny 2, preset 2. Change that to I. And then if I switch between them, so camera 1 is the original preset. And then if I go to camera 2, which is the same one, yep, it will absolutely do that. So it will zoom and so on. So if I actually reposition this camera as well over here, and then between, I think the two cameras, so it will do like a transition that Martin's going to show as well, together with the zoom. So it's a mixture. It's very cool, actually. It's a very cool way of doing that. So that is PTZ camera support in 5 minutes or less. Let me know in the comments if you understood any of that, but it's a really good option. And I think there's a ton of support. I like the fact that they're doing it for NDI cameras as well. So you're not relying on just everything that's connected via a cable to your Mac. NDI and all other support. And Ken and Glenn have thrown down the gauntlet and added a challenge, and said that if you find a camera that's not supported, they will have a play with it and see if they can get it working. So there you go. So before we move on to Martin's demo,
before we move on, just out of this is me just noticing things as we go along.
Go ahead.
So I've got my main camera, which is not PTZ, it's the Sony ZV-E10, which is the main one you're looking at. There are 2 PTZ cameras around the room, but not this one. But I have noticed that in the ZV-10, which is coming in via a Camlink, that I have suddenly got those controls for the ZV-E10. So I'm just wondering now what's going to happen when I press them, if anything indeed. So if there is absolutely no movement on the screen,
no, there's not.
Which there doesn't appear to be.
I'm not sure what that does.
That I am slightly baffled then as to why we have that, because somebody did mention that there's some cameras will accept a degree of PTZ control digitally, even though they haven't physically got it. So
right.
Each one of the Osbots is actually physically moving. So in and out and zoom, whatever. So somebody mentioned that it would affect the camera a little, but it's not doing anything at all. But I do have the control set available to me, which seems wrong to me.
Yeah, that does seem a bit odd. Somebody has mentioned that before. That was me. Sorry, not you.
You.
If you try and zoom in, I guess it's not going to do anything, because I know some cameras have the ability to do like a digital zoom depending on the sensor and things like that. So But yeah, I wonder why the Sony's, or it's been picked up by that software to suggest that there are some PTZ elements within the Sony camera. I'm not sure. Okay. Interesting, but thanks for noticing that. I know somebody did mention it, so I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah,
but,
so what it's doing, it's actually picking it up, not on the Sony camera as such, but because it's coming in via a cam link. So it's, mine are the Easy Cap cam links. So it's picking up the cam link, and it thinks that the cam link might be connected to a camera that's got PTZ. So I don't know whether it's because the cam link is in the middle of that chain of command, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to ask about that, but that's an interesting one. I haven't seen it on mine, so looking at all the cameras I've got connected here, I don't think I'm seeing anything on the camera switcher that would suggest any PTZ control. No, it's just the two ob spots for me, which is what I would expect, but interesting. All right, I guess you're up next if you'd like to talk a little bit about the feature that everybody's going crazy about, live motion.
Yeah, live motion. So Keynote for a long time has had Magic Move, and other packages such as OBS have had the equivalent of Magic Move as well. And that is just where you're able to morph from one position to another with cameras and shapes and various other different things. And we can now do some of that in Ecamm. So you can do it in PowerPoint as well. It's the other one that you could do it in. They call it Morph in that. In Ecamm, it's gone through various different name changes, but I think it's called Live Transition now, although I will continue to call it Magic Move accidentally because I'm so used to that from Keynote. So in principle, what I wanted to do is just show you very, very simply what that actually means if you've never seen Magic Move before. So if I just flick to this scene here, so here I've just got a scene here with a nice bubble in it, which is potentially where I might be bringing in my comments from LinkedIn, if that's where we're coming in live, and if we could get comments from LinkedIn, but that's another question. But so scene number one, if you have a look down in the bottom corner down there, scene number one, and if I move over here to scene number two, you'll see it's identical at the moment. So what actually happens is when I'm on scene number one and then transition to scene number two, providing the object is the same on both scenes, then we will get a transition of sorts. So if I come to my speech bubble on scene number one, and I just make it small down the bottom here somewhere, and then I go to scene number two, it should transition that smoothly. But what I haven't done is I haven't set up the transition correctly. So just to remind you, because Neil's told you already, under options, go to transition and choose live motion between those two. So now when I do it, hopefully I'm going to get that sliding transition. So in principle, you can do that sliding transition with pretty much anything that you want in terms of cameras and overlay pictures. I need to be careful what I'm saying here, and various different elements within Ecamm, but you cannot do it for text and shapes at the moment. So this will not work for text and shapes. So you need to think of other ways to do it for text and shapes. So that is one simple way that it just transitions between slide one and slide two, and it's going to move that little bubble around for me. But the reality is, if I was doing that, I probably wouldn't want that to appear quite that way, because it's, I would really want that to be disappeared and then just appear. So the way to do that is on slide number one here, I can come to my little bubble and hit the pencil control. Now you can't see this, but I'm now able to reduce the opacity on that little bubble using a slider in Ecamm. So I'm going to make the opacity 0, and in fact what I'm also going to do is I'm going to move that bubble as well, because I thought that was going to disappear completely when it went to 0, but it hasn't. So I'm going to take that bubble and I'm going to move it behind my camera. So you'll see the bubble is about to disappear behind my camera and behind everything else. So now when I transition between the scenes and go to the second scene, you'll see that that has kind of appeared out of nowhere. So rather than it being visible on the first scene, it's now invisible. When I transition, it's come out from effectively behind my camera and jumped up to full size. So that's just one trick, and it depends where you position the bubble as well and what size you make it. So if I come back here, and I'm going to bring my bubble back so you can see where it is, and I'm going to bring up the opacity again. So if I take that bubble, there are a couple of other things that I can do. You know, maybe if I put it up here in the first instance and then make it invisible again, opacity 0, and I'm going to stick that behind the camera again, and then transition. Then you'll see the bubble has come from the top corner down the way, because I'd hidden the bubble behind my camera but up at the top of the screen rather than at the bottom of the screen. So just again, scene number 1, the bubble is currently hiding up in that top corner up there. So when I go to the next scene, it's going to transition from that top corner downwards. So that's the same for everything that you do, and there's some other clever things that you can do as well. So let me, in this case, make this bubble here a bit bigger, because I'm not quite sure whether you're going to be able to see this or not, or how well this is going to work. It works very well for cameras, what I'm about to do, but I don't know how well it's going to work for anything else. So let's just put that in the middle there and quite large, and we'll go back to scene number 1. And in scene number 1, if you remember, my little bubble is hiding, so I'm going to make that visible again so you can see what's going on. So here is my little bubble here, and we know that I want it to appear roughly here but bigger. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to hit the option key down, and I'm going to crop the bubble right down, or make it disappear completely, which is what I've just done there. I think I probably need to make it a bit bigger in order to be able to crop it easily. So I'm just going to crop it down this time, put it somewhere in the middle, and then hide it by moving it to the back of the scene. So those of you who know Ecamm, I'm going to move it right back behind absolutely everything on my scene so it disappears, and then we'll go to the next scene and see what happens. So because I'd moved it in the middle there, then what I've got is it just sort of expanding out of nowhere. So if I play about with that a bit more, I can get it to look a little bit nicer. But what it's doing, instead of coming from the top corner or the bottom corner, it's just expanding out of nowhere, because I put it behind everything and it transitions to there. So in its simplest form, that's the way that you can play about with these magic moves. If you've got a couple of cameras, then you can get some nice shifts from one person to 2 people. So you're maybe having me sitting in the larger part of the screen and Neil in the smaller part of the screen, and then slide back so Neil's bigger. Or you could be bringing in a picture, which is slide material, and have that slide in and your camera shift to be a bit smaller on one side of the screen. So those are the sort of things that people tend to think about automatically, but there's a lot of other clever elements that you can do with this live motion transition. So hiding behind cameras, hiding behind edges, making things opacity 0 and shrinking them, and you can also get it to do things like perspective as well, so you can turn things to a maximum perspective and it will actually roll them in quite nicely. That looks quite good. You can wipe in guests, that's a cool one. and there's quite a few other ones as well that are a bit daft. So you can change all of the rotation and things on one scene and have something literally spin in and grow larger if that's what you really want to do, which I don't recommend, but you can do that if you really want to. So that feature, people have been asking for it for a long time. It's going to be interesting to see just how many people want to create some sort of a motion sickness going on. We'll see, but I predict thoroughly that what's going to happen is we're going to see a lot of streams with people moving about all over the place. So my recommendation is, just use it sparingly, but there's plenty of options to use it, but don't overdo it because it will just look mad and not particularly pleasant. So you use it sparingly.
Yeah, what's the general rule they say, Martin? Just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? So
you should, exactly.
So Saeed had a question, which I think you've already answered, but I'll put it up here anyway. So he said, you can just move outside the visible area, can't you? I think you've explained that already, that you can move an element outside the area and a bit transition it.
So the interesting thing is, if you're using Keynote in particular, I'll refer to Keynote because I know that better. If I was doing a transition in Keynote on slide number 1, what I would actually do is I would put the element that I wanted to slide in off the screen, because in Keynote you have an area off the screen that you can put things in, and then on slide number 2 you position it on the screen, so effectively it moves from off the screen to on the screen. It doesn't work that way in Ecamm because there is no off the screen in Ecamm as such. So what you do in Ecamm, or what I have done in Ecamm to achieve the same effect, is I make something very, very, very small by cropping it right down, and then I either hide it under the frame at the edge of the screen or behind absolutely everything. And then what happens is that very, very thin element just gets bigger. So if you want something that appears to be off the screen and moving onto the screen, then you can do it that way by just hiding it very, very thin, cropped down at the edge of the screen, and then moving it in. So that is not immediately apparent, but that's the way you can do it. If all you do is make something or put something behind everything, it'll just sort of appear on the screen, whereas it will slide in nicely if you do it from hiding behind one edge of the screen and slim down. So hopefully, Saeed, that answers the question. So I don't know whether it works the same way in OBS, but maybe you can answer that question for us.
Yeah, feature request from Saeed. He says for Ecamm, magic off-screen area. So yeah, there you go. So you just basically not in the area at all, and just transition in from somewhere else. Exactly. That would work, maybe. We'll see. Lots of applications for this live transition. I can't just call it live motion. I keep getting it mixed up. Sorry, I mix up between Magic Move, live transition, and live motion. So it's live motion. Hopefully it doesn't change when it becomes in the full version. And just a disclaimer as well. I know people who are listening to this, and we have to say this anyway, that not everything in the beta could potentially go into the live version. Ecamm reserve the right to pull out any of these features if they're found to be unstable or not required, or a better or an updated feature comes in. So maybe not everything you see is going to be coming here, but let's wait and see for now. So Saeed has said, in OBS you can place stuff in the same way you described for Keynote. So Keynote and OBS then look like they have a lot of similarities in terms of the flexibility, because as you mentioned, I think, Martin, there's a lot more tweaking and control that you have within Keynote over what you would typically have today in live motion, right?
So in Keynote, what you would do is you would reduce your screen size down to 75% or 50%, and that means the screen itself is in the middle and you've got space all around it. So you can put things in the space all around it. So that's what Saeed is referring to. And you can't do that on Ecamm. It doesn't have the concept of going outside the boundaries of your screen as it exists at the moment. And one of the things for us, so there's three things that are currently restrictions on the Ecamm version. One is you can't move text and you can't move shapes. Shapes is not quite so much of an issue because you can always just create a shape as a picture and then drop it in, and if you create a triangle, then you'll be able to morph the triangle. And I suspect then I guess exactly the same for adding text. So if you had a triangle and put some text in it that you'd created on Keynote or something else, and you bring that in, it will morph bigger and smaller. So that's the workaround for the fact that you can't currently do anything with text or with shapes. But the one restriction which I find at the moment a little bit of a grumble about, or I grumble about it, is there is a fixed time for that transition to happen. So if you are trying to transition something from the far end of the screen to the opposite end of the screen, it will take the same time as if it's a very short transition. So if you're going from one end of the screen to the other, that's going to go from one side to the other, and whereas a short one will take the same amount of time but only go a small distance. So there is no speed control. So one of the things that I have requested is some sort of speed control on that motion. We already have it on other transitions. So if we think about the crossfade, there is a crossfade, slow crossfade, and very slow crossfade. So I'm hoping that they do the same sort of thing with the motion transition, because for some purposes you want it to be slow and others you want it to be quick. So let's wait and see whether or not that happens. But you can't control the speed of that transition. Saeed, can you control it on OBS? No doubt he's going to say yes, but
probably
we'll find out in a moment.
We'll definitely find out. So yeah, I mean, it's open to potentially being tweaked and changed and having more control. And it's great that you've put in these requests, because I think this is probably going to be one of the biggest features that people will use, especially for bringing in presentations or some form of graphics. As we spoke about earlier, it might not be the best mechanism to control and have all your sort of presentation in Ecamm. It's not a presentation tool, but I guess, some people might want to do that. Saeed actually says, I think the answer is yes. So it looks like there's a lot of flexibility and control currently in OBS, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah. So in Keynote, you can delay the time it's coming in. You can say how long it's going to come in for. It has other options like fade in, fade out, and bounce and things like that. So there's a lot more you can do in Keynote with that, which brings me back to the previous question or discussion point, which is, can you now do presentations in Ecamm? I think the answer is Keynote is always going to be better for total presentations, and in particular if you've got animations within the presentations. However, if you are just using one or two slides and that's all you've got to present around, then I would venture to suggest that it's much easier in Ecamm now. So yeah, create your slide in Keynote and then just take that one slide as a picture and bring it in that nice way in Ecamm, so that you haven't got Keynote open at the same time and loads and loads of windows everywhere to play about with and mess about with and get confused by. So no, it's not going to replace a presentation tool, but it is a halfway house if you're only doing a simple presentation with set of bullet points, couple of pictures, that type of thing. You can very, very easily do it and make it look great in Ecamm on its own, and it just makes it way less complicated than having a separate program running and another window and another button to press, and then accidentally moving forward a scene when you meant to move forward a slide, or trying to move forward both at once, or all those sort of things go away. So it simplifies the process, although it does give you a little bit more of an overhead in that you need to create your slide and then bring it in. So
I think it's worth noting as well for people who are listening on what's not included in the live motion. So there's certain parameters and elements within a particular overlay that will change or will morph when you transition between one scene to another, but there's some things that aren't supported. Do you want to just mention what those are?
Well, I suppose I should have mentioned that lots of other elements are supported. So, for instance, if I've got a border and shape on my current camera and I morph to another one that's a different shape and border, then the morph will accommodate that. It will move. So if I had a big border on this here and then I moved to a camera that was no border but I was a circle, it will actually, it will do that for you. It will do that morph. And it will also take into account any of the other parameters, so the border color, so you could morph different colors or something like that, which might be quite a nice thing to do, just morph a bit of color change as you moved your camera around a bit. Perhaps you did that to highlight somebody, so maybe you've got 2 or 3 people on the screen and then you want to make someone bigger, and as you make them bigger, perhaps you put a red motion border around them, so it goes from no motion border to a motion border around them when they become the highlighted speaker. So that type of thing, really there's no limits that I'm aware of on that type of thing. And I might even try that with a bit of video in a minute as well, because I haven't tried it with a bit of video.
Yeah.
But I think the videos will work as well, because it works on GIFs as well. I've tried GIFs. So yeah, it pretty much seems to work on almost anything. He says looking for a gift somewhere to try it with.
Well, why are you looking for that?
But I don't know if I got one immediately. Yeah.
There's a few enhancements for people who use Ecamm for Zoom as well. I think I might move on to that one next. I'm going to post a Zoom link in the chat. It might post, depending if YouTube decides to post it. There it is. So if anybody who's listening to the show and wants to just join in, this is purely testing only, just for talking about active speaker camera elements that have now been added to Zoom and the way that you can control a little bit more on that. So anybody who's in the chat, Val, Saeed, and I think there's another gentleman who joined us as well. The more the merrier, if my machine doesn't break. Then yeah, you're more than happy to join us in the Zoom, Dwayne. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about is the different sort of active speaker modes in Zoom and things like that. So once we get more people in, and here's somebody already. Hello, Saeed. Saeed has joined us. Hello, Saeed. Welcome to the show. I'm not going to bring you straight in yet for a second because I just want to test something with you. So thank you for joining us. We'll sit you in the Zoom room for a second. I'm just going to switch a scene to where we have the host and a guest and nobody else at the moment. And what I want to test here is, first of all, I'm just going to clean up Martin's. I'm just going to zoom you in a little bit, Martin. On the scene, I don't know why you're appearing there, because technically you haven't said anything yet, but you're the active speaker, so I think that's fine. That's fine. You haven't said anything. So Saeed, if you are connected to audio, maybe you could just say a few words to see if you pop into the active speaker.
Hello, here I am.
There you go. So
Yes.
Perfect. So what has changed in this version is that previously I would have had to add you as a camera to the production in order for me to even pop you in to this. So what they've done now is, if you think about how that works, technically we could have a Zoom workshop where there's 20 people in there, and we have some guest speakers. There could be myself, there could be Martin, there could be you, Saeed, and then the remainder of the people who are just in the Zoom room, if we take them off mute, as a workflow, we could then ask one of them to speak and they would just pop straight into the active speaker without having to be brought in as a camera and all that kind of stuff. So that's a nice sort of UI, quality of life improvement, as I like to mention it. So that's something that they've added recently, which was good. How are you anyway, Saeed? It is nice to see you.
I'm doing great. Thanks a lot for asking. And I'm, regardless, just want to say to the, first of all, you have to commit to one name. So I don't know what it's called. Is it the Magic Slide?
No, we have to commit to one name. It keeps changing. I know. It's called Live Motion. Live Motion. Just think of that. That's it.
Okay, I know you're trying very hard to not get a lawsuit from Apple, so everything is fine for the moment. But I think it's a great start. It's in beta, as you said. But it's still a great start and something that was requested. People ask me when they see, doing it in the other tool I don't want to mention. I think there will be a lot of people very happy about this and trying a lot of cool things. Opens a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, and I think, as we mentioned, just because all these features are in here, everybody shouldn't be using them, because it's just like anything else. It's overkill, right? If you just see everybody just sliding and whatever, I think it serves a purpose. Like when you look at certain news broadcasts and things like that, they'll have it in there a couple of times to do a specific transition for a particular scene. It's not in every scene, so it shouldn't be there. We've put it in most of these at the moment. The thing is as well, though, it is a global transition. So any transition that we have set currently will always be there. So you can't at the moment set it on a per scene basis, as far as I'm aware. So once you've set the live motion in motion, then it's always going to be that transition no matter what. So again, careful design if you seem to think. Go ahead, Martin.
No, that's not right.
Is it not right?
Oh, all right. No. Well, maybe my interpretation of what you're saying is incorrect. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, that's possible.
Scene by scene, you can change the transition type. So by default, you could have your live motion transition is your scene transition. But between scene 1 and scene 2, that might happen by default. Between scene 2 and scene 3, I can change the transition type to slow crossfade or something like that. So you can do it on a scene by scene basis. You can have different transition types. Is that what you meant?
I think some people were talking as well about elements. So, but that's a different type of transition altogether, right? So the moving in and different portions of the screen and where it's coming in, flying in from the top and flying in from the bottom. I think people wanted to do that on a per element basis as well, which gets a bit confusing.
Yeah, you can't do it on a per element basis, but no, the magic move is per scene. You are correct. Right. But you can have different transitions between scenes. The elements on those scenes you can have different transitions on, but not the magic move on individual elements. The magic move only applies to the whole screen.
Right.
So that's immensely complicated, hasn't it?
It can get complicated.
The other thing that they've done, while you mention it, this active speaker mode as well. It used to be uber sensitive, so if somebody coughed or sneezed or clicked their fingers, they would be in the active speaker straight away. But now I think they've toned it down a little bit so that it's not quite so jumpy or not quite so active in terms of an active speaker, which is actually turns out to be a good thing.
We can test that actually. I'm going to switch a preference off here, which is called exclude visible inputs from active speaker. And if you speak in a second, Martin, then that should pop you in. Oh, it already did.
I didn't say anything, and it popped me in.
All right. Saeed, do you want to speak?
I'll try something.
I don't know which point is it proved, but I just coughed a little bit and it seems to work.
Yeah, it's not super quick like it was before, but yeah, that's right. It's not too terrible. I'm going to switch that back off so we don't get confusing, because it can get a bit jarring, especially the previous version where, as you said, somebody taps the microphone and pops straight in. So that was one of the features. Let me just show you where that is real quick if I go into live demo mode. So this is basically where it is. So in the Zoom menu, you've got a few new things. One, you can exclude these visible inputs from active speaker, which means Martin and I are not part of the active speaker group. If Saeed was brought in as a camera source, with this enabled, he would not be part of the active speaker either. We'd have to put him in a camera placeholder somewhere. One great addition is automatically spotlight myself. So as you know, if you're doing a presentation, and one of the things you'd want to do is to make sure that the Ecamm production that we're seeing is visible to all Zoom participants and automatically spotlight yourself. So there's two things you can do now. You can set that preference, so you will be automatically spotlit when 2 or more people join your Zoom call, or there's a Stream Deck plugin now where you can just hit a button and it will toggle spotlight on or off. I'm not sure if that's going to work for me. I'm not going to try it. But anyway, you get the idea. So at least it's a thing that I always forget to do, and a lot of people forget to do, to spotlight themselves when they're in the middle of a presentation. So it's a great workflow.
Just wondering, because usually the spotlight mode, you need at least 3 people I think, in
Oh, is it
in a
3?
Zoom
Yeah, it is
meeting
3.
to be
Sorry,
able.
2 or more. 2, yes,
Yeah.
I meant, sorry. Yeah. 3 in total.
I didn't mean to correct you. I'm
No,
just,
no,
I'm
it's
just,
fine.
I'm
No,
just
it's fine.
wondering. So, because the usual thing is, I mean, if I do something by myself, I have to wait for at least 2 people to join, or I invite like 2 bots, or log
Yeah.
in myself twice just to have this from the beginning. But this doesn't change anything, right? It will
No, it's
still be the
2 or
same,
more
or is it?
participants. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so it's yourself, 2 participants. It's just following the Zoom rules. Unfortunately, we can't, which is a shame because you potentially could, you should be able to do that if you're just presenting Zoom. Then I guess, but it doesn't matter, right? Because it's just there's nobody else there if there's only one person. So it would just be a side by side, or you just pin yourself, right, as a speaker maybe. That's one other option. Okay. Val can't join us, but she does have a question. See if it's going to pop up here. Let me just bring on the question. I don't know where it's going to appear. There it is. It'll appear there. So do we know what version of Mac it's compatible with for the new changes? Thank you, Saeed. So I'm running a Mac Studio M1, the older one, 32 gig of RAM, and it's working fine. I think, Martin, have you got an M1 or an M2?
Mine is the Studio. It might be an M2, but it's
Okay.
the entry-level version. It's,
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. Mine's nothing sort of special.
so
just
it's not going to
32
cause
gig
it.
RAM.
It's not going to cause any problems for either Neil or I. But yeah, look out for non-M series Macs. I think we're moving to the point in time where most of the Ecamm stuff is only really going to work on the M series of Macs. So, including audio, which I believe is something that you'll know much more about than me, Neil, in terms of what they've added in. I didn't really understand it.
I can show you real quick. I think OBS has got this as well. And we can mention OBS. So audio filters. So the ability to use VSTs, plugins for audio chains, that's compatible right now in OBS. Yeah, you can do that. I think I even remember having that a way back. I think for musicians and people who really want to sort of leverage some of the plugins that they've purchased, you now have the ability to add audio plugins, audio filters to specific audio chains. And I'd be interested to know some of the audio routing as well, how this compares sort of in OBS. But let me just go into Live Demo Mode and just quickly show you where that is. So in your sound levels panel, down here, you've got this new little, looks like a jigsaw puzzle, which is a new icon that allows you to add audio filters to various sound levels within your system. So depending on what you've got now, whether it's your audio chat for your main speaker, for your microphone, or specific guests, you can now add filters to that. So by default, we just have to click on here, add a new audio filter. I think the filters have just popped in somewhere else. Let me just double check. Double click. So you can see here that you can specify 2 things. A specific channel. Does it work on the entire mix, or do you want to just add a particular plugin to a specific channel? In this case, I'm just going to add it to the main mic. You can also add it to a secondary mic, so that could be another sort of second person if you're doing a podcast, for example, side by side. Now, it only supports at the moment interview guests. That doesn't, I think, apply to Zoom guests because we can't bring in Zoom audio separately at the moment, so that's only in interview mode. And you can't even apply it, I think, to the entire Zoom guests. So I don't think that's available right now. But you can add a plugin. So these are all the plugins that are available on my machine. Now, not everybody's machine is going to be the same because I do music, so I've got quite a few different plugins here that I've bought over the years. These are the Apple default plugins. But the one I'm just going to add real quick is a reverb. And now to the people on the call, you can probably hear some crazy reverb going on just from my voice. Hello, welcome. So you get the impression that now you can add all kinds of different plugins. I'm going to turn that off before it gets really annoying. Switch that off there. So things like EQ, compression, pitch correction, pitch up, pitch down. You can make yourself sound like a chipmunk or a monster or whatever it might be. These are not yet actionable by any of the Stream Deck plugins, so you can't turn them on and off right now. But in the future, I hope that's something you could do. Just interested to know the workflow in OBS. Is that a similar thing where you can just add a plugin per sort of input, if you like, within the mix?
So how it works is, so this is by default, but how it works is there are filters. So just like I would add to my camera a black and white filter for audio source. I can add VSTs, so everything that has the what are they called? Everything that's VST plugin can be added. So download something from the web and add it there. And also by default, I don't know if this is the same, having the standards of a limiter. So don't go over minus 6 dB, for example, compressor, noise, reduction things, and others, and you can just select them per device or per audio. So even for a video, if I have a video that has audio, I can say, okay, I want a limiter here, so there's some scare moments in it or something like this. Manage the volume of every single source, as they are called there, audio-wise, which is a great thing. And because you mentioned the Stream Deck, I was about to ask, because they are just regular filters, I can just use the filter button on the Stream Deck here and just turn it on or off. So I say, okay, I want to turn off the noise cancellation because I want to show something in the background, or want people to hear something in the background. Just the same button as for turning on black and white effect on my camera. You need to select what to turn on and off. Yeah, so it's a great thing. Especially, I think this is great for if you are not one of those fancy cool kids who has like a Rodecaster and all the other things. Okay, I want a little bit of compression. I want a little bit of adjusting just my standard mic to sound a little bit better and send it into a virtual microphone. It's a great way to start for free without extra hardware. Of course, it's not the same because it's software processed, but still.
I mean, it achieves the same thing.
$700 on a Rodecaster. Well,
absolutely. Well, and somebody said, in the chat, I was looking in shock. I think it was a half joke saying, I'll just ditch my Rodecaster now. And what people don't, or maybe not understand, is that the more filters that you add, the more processing, the more components, these are called audio units. And depending whether from third-party plugins, can take a lot of processing power. In DAWs or digital audio workstations, you have the ability to freeze the plugins, as it's called, whereby the plugin will be set to memory and they'll be frozen, whereby they're not going to consume any more CPU cycles and things like that. And that's just a trait of some of the audio workflows. But in here, the more that you add, potentially you could start overloading. Oh, is it an emergency tone? It sounds like is that a tornado warning, Martin?
We mentioned OBS too often, so.
You mentioned OBS one too many times, and
there
I got
it is.
A government warning. It's the first time I've had one of those. Storm damage in infrastructure causing power, blah, 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 blah.
On its way,
red warning of wind has been issued. Well, it's up to 90 mile an hour winds. So
yikes!
90 mile an hour. That's a lot of winds.
That's a lot of kilometers.
So
for Europe,
it's even more kilometers.
That's a lot. Wow. Okay,
so
that's
put all your devices on mute prior to coming on the call. I wonder whether even if I'd put that on mute, whether that particular type of thing would have come through anyway.
I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe
it would. It's the same where it in Germany. You cannot mute it or anything. I think it's just.
Well, it's good, right? Because
in case of catastrophes. Yeah,
exactly.
So
yeah. Val said that scared her because obviously with everything going on in LA with the fires where Val's based, there's probably been going off a lot.
Serious.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you're safe, Val. I know you're back in the fold of doing all the moderating and stuff for Ecamm, but heart goes out to you with all the stuff that's been going on in LA. It's awful. Hopefully things will return to normal soon. Yes, Said.
I didn't want to interrupt. I was just wondering about one thing where you're talking about, remember I'm a noob when it comes to Ecamm. Can you define other audio tracks? So what I mean is, like, if I have a video and I have my voice and maybe a guest and so on and other things, can I define where they will be recorded, or is it just one mixed track in the recording? For example, I record over... ISOs. Oh, okay. So when I go into it, for example, DaVinci. Okay.
There is some facilities for that. It's called isolated recording or ISO recording, as people call it. And in the preferences, you have these options right now. So by default, we record all the broadcast. And then there is the ability to pick specific cameras. At the moment, you're only allowed to record 3 of your camera sources, but you can choose which microphone, and you can add multiple mics as well. You can have up to sort of 2 or 3 audio sources, depending on which camera you've got in there. And then you can also record isolated audio tracks. This is not enabled right now for me because we're live and recording, but that has the ability to do that. And all your interview and Zoom guests. So if we had 8 Zoom guests on here, their video and audio would be also recorded separately. But again, use wisely, because we don't necessarily want to have all of this being recorded. And I was doing some workflows yesterday trying to record something. I was using a third-party recording tool. I had Ecamm recording. I had 2 cameras recording. I had something else recording, and my Mac started to stutter. So that's not an excuse for me to get an M4, but there will be a limit to what your Mac can do based on how much processing. And I always record in 4K. I always have the stream going at as highest resolution as my system can support. So yeah, you have to be careful with things like that. But hopefully that answers your question to a certain degree.
I think it does, if I understood it correctly. So from just my use case, why I do this, so I use like 3 audio tracks. I'm only talking about audio. So I say, okay, my microphone is always on its own track, so I can do something with it, just in case somebody, as we had before, unmutes themselves, they don't interrupt my voice, right? So I can just isolate it and cut out everything that disrupts me. And the other thing is for just in case you play music or audio. Like I'm talking about Zoom meetings in general, and I want to repurpose this somewhere. So okay, I can cut out the whole the whole music just in case there is something that's maybe not copyright or anything. So I can replace it with something different, and nobody will notice the difference because it's just a separate track, right?
Yeah, not everything is separated, unfortunately, because I've got music playing in the background at the moment, which is copyright free, but that isn't recorded as a separate audio track. So that's unfortunate at the moment. But yeah, maybe that would be a good idea. Just want to say hello to John. Thanks for joining us, John. I know you're a big Rodecaster fan and all kinds of stuff, and I think he's been liking the new Live Motion. Is it called Live Motion transition? Things like that. Yes. Yeah. So that's good. Let me just think what else there is in here. There's so many things, but we're almost getting close to the top of the hour. Oh, so an isolated video track is also going to be recorded for the active speaker as well. So you would be recorded separately as well. So that would be anybody that's coming into the production. So I'm wondering how that works. So it's probably going to be one long track. Say if you had 10 people dipping in and out with questions and things like that, then I think that would be a single track with their audio recorded separately as well, where then you could probably slice and dice that up as well. But yeah, that could get quite interesting.
I think that's large. But I think that's also basic like Zoom settings. I mean, if you go in the back end of Zoom, and you can say, record every participant separately as a separate video, as a separate audio file, and also the gallery or the screen sharing separately, and then all together separately. Then if you have a large meeting, you have like 75 different videos.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that would be a lot. John was saying that he is loving the Live Motion, but he's not sure how to use the multi-track selection yet. So I think with multi-track, so this is another option that they've added. So if your audio mixer supports a multi-track option, i.e. splitting out the tracks separately across the USB bus, then there's an option now in Ecamm where you can actually control the level of each of those multi-tracks. And what that means is, for example, if there's 2 people in the room and you want to pan them left and right, because Zoom also supports stereo audio, you could technically now have a stereo mix. Maybe if you've got a band playing as well, those multi-tracks could be sort of separated, mixed individually within Ecamm, and then mixed left and right, and also add some audio filters on there. So you're almost getting to the point where you can have a decent audio mixer within Ecamm natively, but you do need to have an interface that will support the multi-track component. And again, it's going to be putting more sort of pressure on your machine, if you like. So things to think about with that. But again, it's something that I wouldn't particularly use unless we get Martin on here again. And maybe you can split them left and right and you could have sort of a stereo. But no, not many people listen in stereo at the moment, I think, particularly when you're on the phone or the TV. But who knows in the future. Let's see. See if there's any other questions. So John was saying he knows that Zoom also allows you to pick your input and have multi-tracks you can pick from. Yeah, so Zoom is quite sort of impressive in terms of audio things. And obviously with this integration with Zoom, with Ecamm, then anything that potentially is available in Zoom could be ported over across. One of the things that people have been asking for is the Zoom tiles. So having the ability to bring Zoom tiles into Ecamm and then being able to sort of manipulate all the Zoom participants using the tiles feature, and then also having your Ecamm camera placement holders and things like that on top. That could get quite complicated, I think. I don't know. I know I've seen some people kludge it together by doing a screen share of tiles on one screen, bringing it in as a screen share overlay in Ecamm, then overlaying your cameras on top of that. So yeah, it's all about the audience's experience. What's your feeling on tiles? Have you used it before? Saeed, is that something that you potentially could use in your workflows, or do you prefer to just have like people like this and guests and a one-to-one?
I've seen the demos,
right,
and it looks awesome, so I like just the way it is. But there's a downside. It's the same problem for me with Ecamm. Not available for certain operating systems. I don't want to mention them, but so don't get in trouble. But it's not available for me. But I like the concept from an audience perspective. But when I watch through some videos on YouTube where you can just see it in action and how people set up things, oh my God, I need an engineer and like 3 co-hosts to just manage the whole thing. It just looks overwhelming to set up for me as somebody who never did it. But the outcome for the audience, I think, is great. Maybe it depends on what kind of event you are doing.
Yeah.
For a team meeting, I wouldn't like bother too much about setting up tiles and stuff, right, with 3 people. But if it's like a real big event, or I don't know, something with stakeholders or business decisions are made, why not using it if you have the capabilities to do it? But it's a really great thing, I think. And it's just like what you are doing right now. If I join a Zoom meeting and I say, oh my God, what's that? But I think that's maybe the point when as an audience member, oh, this doesn't look like a Zoom meeting at all. Why are these things floating around and different tiles and faces and stuff? I think that can just grab attention and make people focus more on you as a speaker and on the rest, rather than reading emails or doing something else.
What a wonderful segue to what we want to talk about next. Thank you, Saeed.
As if it was planned. Even I don't know what's coming next.
You didn't.
No, I'm just kidding.
Even you don't know what's coming next. He does now. So Tuesday of this week, so that's Tuesday the 28th, I think.
That's
at
right.
5 p.m. We are going to do our first show on LinkedIn and YouTube in vertical only. And we will be doing that by running Ecamm for Zoom in vertical mode. So we will actually be holding a vertical Zoom meeting, if that makes sense. So if you're around at 5 p.m. on Tuesday of next week, then you can join a vertical Zoom meeting. And it might look, do you want to put me on full screen for a second?
I will.
Neil? So it might look a little bit like this. So this is just something we did a quick recording of, and the idea was that yes, that is going to be a Zoom meeting, and this is potentially what your Zoom meeting could look like in vertical. And the reason for doing this on LinkedIn is, whilst you're actually live, if you went to have a look at your phone, it wouldn't look very good. It would look fairly terrible actually, because it's just going to appear in landscape, but it would look okay on a big screen. However, because LinkedIn is now pushing vertical video, when you look at the replay of the live, it will appear full screen 9:16 on your phone. So it will actually look full screen on your phone, and it will look pretty cool. So the idea is that we run that live stream in vertical on Monday. So if you're
Tuesday.
around, if you're around, if Val, Tuesday at 5 p.m. No point in advertising it on the wrong day, is there really?
Not really.
We're very bad at call to actions, but yeah, Tuesday 5 p.m. UK time. So if you're around John, or you're around Val, or anybody else who's around who's watching the replay, then we can have a few guests on, and we will actually have something akin to what you're looking at the moment, but we'll all be sort of stacked up a little bit. But believe it or not, it will actually look pretty good on vertical, but it will look much better on the replay than it will on your live. So if you're going to watch it on your desktop live and then play it back on your phone at a later point in time. So whether or not LinkedIn will support live vertical video, we will find out. They seem to be heading in that direction, and everybody else does, so why wouldn't they? But we will wait and see. We'll also be streaming out to YouTube, so that will automatically go out to the shorts world in YouTube, which means we could get all sorts of weird comments coming in. So we'll just have to wait and see. It's something brand new. We don't think anybody else has done it in this format before. A couple of people have tried it from a theory point of view, including me, but not actually run a complete show in this manner. So this time on Tuesday of next week.
Thank you for that. John's just asking what time is that
in the mess of that
in the US. So John, that's 12 noon Eastern.
It's now. More or less,
it's basically now. Yeah, but now an hour from now, John. Yeah, basically. If that makes sense.
Whatever time it is. Yeah, an hour earlier than now is the start, isn't it? Yeah,
so. A question for you, Martin, from John, real quick. The question is, since you design amazing scenes, blah, 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 I wonder if you ever wanted to have a rotate check mark with the speed control rather than having to do it as an animation. Do you understand what he's saying there? Because I'm not 100% clear on that.
Yeah, I'm not 100% clear, I'm afraid, John.
Can you clarify that for us, John? Because I'm not, specifically for Martin, not for me. But if you could clarify, that'd be great. John did ask another question on what he'd like to have just with regards to audio. Is he likes having various tracks showing up in his Ecamm levels. Let the control the physical hardware and muting with Rodecaster, but reflected in Ecamm. Yeah, that's something that. Yeah, I mean, we can do that with the Stream Deck muting and changing things as you've used my workflow for that. But it would be good to have some sort of visual representation of what's going on the Rodecaster. But yeah, that's something completely different, unfortunately, at the moment. Let's see if there's comments come in. Yeah, just let us know, John, what that question was related to and so on. And Saeed, you've got a stream coming up soon. It's a Zoom session, right, that you're hosting. Could you want to tell people about that? Just is it booked up now, or you still got some spaces?
There's always space, so it's a Zoom meeting. It's not a live stream, but my intention is always you hopefully won't notice that it's a Zoom meeting. However, the topic will be Stream Live. I think you showed it more than once to your live stream audience, but I also want to do a session that's more for a closed audience in Zoom to do all the same things you can do in a live stream, but through the Zoom chat, all the interactions, the magic map, and all the fancy slides. So if you want to join, you can, you can find it somewhere. It's open and free for everybody.
And when is it? Really cool, just let people know when it is.
Oh no, I have to think. It's next Wednesday. It's next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central European time, which is 11 a.m. Eastern, I think.
Yes, I've signed up.
Right.
So I'll be there. That'll be fun to see you. Yeah. We'll put a link in the description of this as well to drive people to it as well. If
that's very, very nice of you.
No problem.
And I think things, because you talked a lot about stopping the promo now a bit, because you talked a lot about Zoom. I think the what is it called? It's hard to distinguish, right, between a live stream and a Zoom meeting, or for example. Right. Once you're in, it's maybe, I have to log in and I can actually talk if I like, so there's a back channel, but elsewise, there's so many tools that work in both, on both platforms, and the quality is super high. You can use tools like Ecamm, for example, for streaming or for Zoom, and hopefully after 5 minutes, you don't care anymore if it's a Zoom meeting or if it's a live stream.
Yeah, as long as it's interactive and stuff like that, and keeps the audience happy, that's the main thing. It doesn't really matter what platform you're on, as long as it's pleasing to the eye and keeps people entertained, and not like your standard Zoom meeting, as we all know and love. let me just try and clarify for you, Martin. So here's the first one. If you have a round logo and want it to spin, would a check mark that allows the overlay to rotate and spin continuously be helpful? Oh, I see. So like a continuous animation button and things like that. So I think he's got a use case here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think I understand now. So there is one that's an Ecamm one that goes round in a circle that was created by one of the guys using an animation tool. I can't remember which animation tool, but I guess sort of a logo with words going around it or something like that might be quite cool. If you could actually get the words in a circle, I guess you'd have to do that elsewhere and then bring it in as a picture. But yeah, it would be a nice to have. So just go to the Facebook beta group for Ecamm and throw it in there as a request. That's what I would do, John, and it will get added to the list. But just beware that there's a very long list, and they're probably not going to have a look at it in the next week or two because they're busy correcting things in the current beta, as we found out just before we went live today. So
yeah, 5 minutes before we went live. Let's download a new beta. Why not? All right, we are slowly coming to an end of the show. We're getting to, well, just past the top of the hour now. Saeed, as ever, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. It's great that you participate. We'll look forward to seeing you on Wednesday, and if you can join us on Tuesday for the vertical, please do so. Pop in. We'll be putting the Zoom link in the show, so hopefully we'll see you there. And take care, and thanks again for joining us. All right, so thanks, Saeed.
See you, Saeed.
All right, so
thanks a lot, guys.
No problem. So yes, we will be back earlier than scheduled on Tuesday next week at 5 p.m. UK, 12 noon Eastern for our new live vertical show. I'm very excited about this. It'll be interesting to see what it looks like, and definitely when we're posting it to YouTube is going to show it in its proper format. And as we said, maybe one day LinkedIn will just basically post in vertical normally without having to wait for it to be done later. But I think it'll look all right anyway on the phone to an extent. But it's all about us and the content, right? And the visuals, of course.
Yeah.
Everything else.
So what we might need to do is we may need to on LinkedIn tell people to go to YouTube, which is a bit embarrassing for LinkedIn, but maybe that encouraged LinkedIn to actually allow you to stream in vertical live, because it seems odd that it will then process it and then for the replay you can watch it in vertical perfectly on LinkedIn.
Exactly.
So yeah, we'll have to do that, and anyone out while watching, you can actually register for the event as well, which isn't a bad idea because you'll get pinged a little reminder by LinkedIn that you're going to the event.
Great. So we will. That's all we've got time for today. We will definitely see you next week. There's a ton of more options and features in the beta version of Ecamm, but go and check it out for yourself. And for those of you that don't know, but you should do by now, that you can run the beta version and the fully fledged working version side by side. You can install them both. They both share the same profiles and things like that, so nothing's going to get messed up if you want to try the beta and have a play with it yourself. And as Martin mentioned before we went live, these beta versions will be incrementally being updated until they get the live version done. We've no idea how many, but as people find either issues or they do tweaks to it, then as we've seen, the beta version only came out a couple of days ago and we've already had an update probably about 3 or 4 days later. So watch this space. There'll be more. Keep checking those updates because there will be some coming. Anything else, Martin, before we go?
No, just, everybody stay safe. I know Neil had storms earlier this week.
Power
We've got
going
storms
out.
coming, and Val's
Crazy.
had terrible problems over her part of the world. So everybody just stay safe. Stay inside if that's what you're meant to do, and play with Ecamm live beta. That will keep you busy.
Do some live streaming. Why not? All right, until Tuesday next week. See you then. Take it easy. See you then.
See you, folks.